Many people may not know, but the Bible talks a lot about the history of Iran, which was previously called Persia, and before that, Elam. These places and their peoples frequently appear in the stories of the Old Testament. For example, these narratives begin in the book of Genesis and continue through several important epochs, including periods when great Iranian empires had direct interactions with the Israelites. Understanding these relationships helps to comprehend many events and their impacts mentioned in the Bible. In this video, we will quickly look at the history of these ancient Iranians and how they related to the Israelites. We will also investigate whether the history of the Iranians and their relationship with the Israelites has any special meaning in the prophecies about the end of times. Let's tell this story starting in the Bronze Age and moving forward to the time when the Persians dominated after the exile in Babylon. The Bible, in the book of Genesis, chapter 10, verse 22, mentions the region of Elam as one of the first kingdoms established after the Great Flood. Elam was located east of the Tigris River, in the area that today belongs to the southwest of Iran. Being well situated, Elam became an important center of culture and power in antiquity, with its influence reaching as far as Mesopotamia. Elam played a complicated role in history, sometimes acting as an adversary and at other times as an ally of great powers in the region, such as the Babylonians and the Assyrians. We don't have many details about the direct interactions between Elam and the tribes of Israel in the ancient texts, but we know that the Elamites, people of Elam, were contemporaries of the patriarchs and judges of Israel. They usually appear as enemies in battle accounts and were part of the empires that significantly influenced the history of Israel, which we will explore further as we continue this story. Herodotus, an ancient historian, tells us that the peoples of the northwest grew stronger with the rise of the Median Empire around the end of the 6th century before Christ. During this period, the tribes of the region we now call Iran united for the first time under a single nation. They were led by Darius, a nearly legendary figure considered the founder of this empire. When Darius came to power, he worked to unify the various Median tribes, which had previously been independent and scattered. He implemented several important reforms in government and law, establishing a set of rules and a centralized government structure. These changes were essential to creating a common identity among the tribes, forming the basis for a more united and stronger state. This unification also paved the way for future territorial expansions under the command of kings who came after him, such as Cyaxares and Astyages. Before we go further, it is important to understand a bit about the Assyrian Empire, which at the time was considered the greatest power. This empire is often mentioned in the Bible, in the Old Testament, as an instrument of divine punishment on Israel and other nations. With remarkable military and administrative capacity, the Assyrians managed to expand their territory from the heart of Mesopotamia to Egypt at the height of their power. They had particularly hostile relations with Israel, with campaigns that resulted in large deportations and efforts to erase the Israeli identity. During the time they were in control, the Kingdom of Israel was conquered, leading to the exile of the 10 northern tribes. In addition, the Assyrians advanced over the Iranian plateau, affecting the Medes who lived there. However, at the end of the 6th century before Christ, the Assyrian Empire began to decline due to a series of internal problems, such as power struggles, weakened administration, and constant resistance from the peoples they had dominated. With the weakening of Assyrian power, the Medes began to gain strength. Cyaxares, the king of the Medes, took advantage of the Assyrians' weakness to expand his territory and increase his influence. Over time, he formed an alliance with the Babylonians, who were led by Nabopolassar, to end the long Assyrian dominance in the region. This strategic alliance also included other Iranian groups, such as the Scythians and the Sarmatians, who shared the same interest in defeating the Assyrians and were ready to collaborate on this task. The Scythians and the Sarmatians, known for their cavalry skills and guerrilla tactics, brought significant military strength to the alliance. The fight against the Assyrians was marked by many intense battles and prolonged sieges. In 612 before Christ, the alliance achieved a major victory with the siege and destruction of Nineveh, the grand Assyrian capital. This event, which the prophet Isaiah had predicted as a divine judgment, marked the end of Nineveh and the beginning of the fall of the Assyrian Empire, paving the way for the emergence of new powers in the region. The Medes managed to control a large part of Iran and neighboring areas, while Nabopolassar and his son Nebuchadnezzar II established the Neo-Babylonian Empire, becoming a dominant force in Mesopotamia. The rise of the Medes and the Babylonians brought about a significant shift in power in the region, directly impacting the political situation in which the Jews lived at that time. Additionally, it is important to mention the Neo-Babylonian Empire in our discussion about the history of Iranian peoples in the biblical context. The prophet Isaiah had predicted that the Medes would be divine instruments for the fall of Babylon. This empire is especially remembered for the figure of Nebuchadnezzar II. He is notorious for the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 before Christ, an event extensively recorded in various historical and prophetic texts of the Old Testament. This attack resulted in the destruction of Solomon's temple and the exile of the Jews, initiating a period of significant theological and cultural consequences for Judah, as detailed in the book of Daniel. King Nebuchadnezzar implemented a policy that involved the deportation and cultural assimilation of the Jews, not just to punish them, but also to integrate them into his vast empire. This was intended to reduce any future resistance. Thus, the conquest of Judah was not just a military action, but also an effort to restructure his empire, both geopolitically and culturally. During the period of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, the Iranian peoples were experiencing a significant moment of change and growth. Meanwhile, the Babylonians focused on managing their empire and their military campaigns against Judah and other territories. To the north, the Medes were strengthening their dominion and establishing a kingdom that would become crucial for a future alliance with the Persians. Initially led by Cyaxares and later by Astyages, the Medes organized a state that began to play an important role in regional politics. This moment was crucial in establishing the foundation for what would become the Grand Achaemenid Empire, led by Cyrus the Great. This empire eventually absorbed and succeeded both Media and Babylon. The Achaemenid Empire began with the rise of Cyrus the Great, who led a Persian revolt against the Medes, resulting in the subjugation of the last Median king. Cyrus, from the legendary Achaemenid dynasty, excelled in both diplomacy and war, skills that allowed him to rapidly expand his territory. One of his most notable conquests was the taking of Babylon in 539 before Christ, when his army captured the city almost without resistance after a brief siege. The peaceful manner in which Cyrus conquered Babylon was not only an effective military strategy, but also a shrewd political move, as he presented himself more as a liberator than a conqueror. Cyrus adopted inclusive policies, such as allowing exiled peoples, including the Jews, to return to their lands and rebuild their temples. This approach not only won the loyalty of the local populations, but also contributed to the stability and unification of his vast empire. The prophet Isaiah refers to Cyrus as the anointed of God, highlighting him as a key figure in fulfilling divine promises. In 538 before Christ, Cyrus issued a decree that allowed the exiled Jews to return and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, an event mentioned in the book of Ezra. Interestingly, the characterization of Cyrus as an anointed one, traditionally applied only to Israeli leaders, broadens the concept of messianism to include a foreign king. This demonstrates how the divine plan of salvation is comprehensive and reaches all the kingdoms of the earth. The liberation of the Jews by a Persian king emphasizes that God acts through all nations and people to realize his divine plans. The permission to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, granted under the rule of the Achaemenid Empire, which was Persian, not only helped restore the religious and cultural identity of the Jews, but also reaffirmed the covenant between God and his people, highlighting the fidelity and continuity of divine promises. Meanwhile, the region of Judah was in the process of recovery, and the Persian Empire continued to expand and strengthen its dominion. At the height of its power, the Achaemenid Empire became the largest empire in the world until then, controlling more than 40% of the global population. After the death of Cyrus and a brief reign of his son Cambyses II, Darius first took the throne in 522 before Christ, after resolving several revolts that threatened the stability of the empire. Darius is remembered for his remarkable management ability. He organized the empire into several provinces, each under the command of a governor he appointed, increasing efficiency and improving control over the vast territories of the empire. Darius also unified the tax system and invested in infrastructure, such as the construction of roads, most notably the famous Royal Road, which improved communication and trade throughout the empire. During the reign of Darius I, the empire expanded to include parts of India, Thrace, and the Indus River Valley. It was during this period that the prophets Haggai and Zechariah made their prophecies, and the Second Temple was rebuilt in Jerusalem under the leadership of Zerubbabel. After Darius I, his son Xerxes I took the throne, known in the Bible as King Ahasuerus, in the book of Esther. This book provides a detailed look at the Persian court and describes a time when the Jews faced the threat of extermination by the plan of Haman, a high official of Ahasuerus. In this setting, a young Jewish exile named Hadassah, also known by the Persian name Esther, unexpectedly became queen of Persia and played a crucial role in protecting her people. With her courage and cunning, she revealed Haman's conspiracy to the king, which led to Haman's execution and the promotion of her cousin Mordecai to a position of influence in the Persian court. The story of Esther not only shows how the Jews were integrated into Persian society, but also highlights divine providence, showing how God places people in strategic positions to fulfill his plans. Subsequently, with the rise of Artaxerxes I, the son of Xerxes, significant developments occurred in Jewish history, marked by the actions of Ezra and Nehemiah. Ezra was a priest and an expert in sacred laws, who led a second group of Jews returning to Jerusalem with the support of King Artaxerxes I. His mission was to rejuvenate the Mosaic law and reorganize the Jewish community, which had drifted away from its religious traditions after the exile. The book of Ezra recounts how he contributed to the reconstruction of the religious and cultural life, reinforcing the role of the Torah as the foundation of Jewish identity and practice. On the other hand, Nehemiah, who initially was a trusted servant of Artaxerxes I, was appointed governor of Judah. He is particularly remembered for leading the reconstruction of the walls of Jerusalem, a symbol of the recovery of the city's dignity and security at that time. The support given by Artaxerxes to the projects of Ezra and Nehemiah highlights how the Persian government managed its conquered regions, allowing some local autonomy while maintaining overall control. The Persian Empire eventually gave way to the conquests of Alexander the Great, who in 331 before Christ overthrew the empire and established his own rule over extensive areas. After the death of Alexander the Great, his vast empire was divided among his generals, resulting in the creation of three major Hellenistic kingdoms: the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, the Seleucid kingdom in Asia Minor, and the Antigonid kingdom in Macedonia and Greece. The region we now know as Iran became part of the Seleucid Empire, which encompassed a vast area, including most of the Near East. The Seleucid rulers attempted to implement Hellenization in the region, a process that involved building cities in the Greek style and promoting Greek religious and cultural customs. However, this policy met with significant resistance from the local populations, who wished to maintain their own cultural and religious traditions. This tension between Seleucid policies and local traditions created many challenges for the empire, both internally and in its relations with other kingdoms, such as the Ptolemaic and Antigonid kingdoms. Moreover, this policy led to several revolts, including the Maccabean revolt in Judea in the 2nd century before Christ. The Parthians, a group of Iranian origin, took advantage of the growing discontent with the Seleucids to establish their own empire. Thus was born the Parthian Empire, a new significant force in the region of Iran. Famous for their heavy cavalry and archery skills, the Parthians managed to resist both the Romans and the Seleucids. They maintained many local traditions and adopted Zoroastrianism as the official religion, strengthening the Iranian identity and culture after a period marked by Greek influence, known as Hellenization. Zoroastrianism, one of the most influential and enduring religions of ancient Iran, teaches that people must choose between good and evil, and that these choices affect their ultimate destiny. The religion also emphasizes purification rituals and offerings of sacrifices, valuing moral order and social justice. These principles influenced the laws and practices of the empires that adopted this faith, shaping their forms of governance. After the end of the Parthian Empire, the Sassanids emerged in 224 after Christ, overthrowing the last Parthian king. They revitalized Persian culture and traditions, reviving many aspects of the ancient Achaemenid Empire. The Sassanids became great rivals of the Roman Empire and later the Byzantine Empire. They were notable for efficient administration, good infrastructure of roads and cities, and for promoting Zoroastrianism, which acted as a unifying and identity-forming element throughout the empire. At the beginning of the 6th century after Christ, the Arabs invaded Iran, which was weakened due to the decay of the Sassanid Empire, leading to Islamic domination in the region. The transition to Islam was not immediate, but occurred gradually over several generations. Initially, Zoroastrianism was still tolerated, but gradually began to lose strength as many Iranians converted to Islam, attracted by the social, economic benefits and the new power structure. Over time, Islam became the dominant religion, deeply shaping the cultural and religious identity of modern Iran. Therefore, it is clear that the histories of Iran and Israel intertwine throughout the centuries. But what does the Bible say could still happen between these two nations? Within certain groups of Christianity, especially those that adopt a futuristic interpretation of biblical eschatology, Iran, as the successor to ancient Persia, is often mentioned in prophecies involving Israel. These views are based on biblical passages that many believe predict future events between these nations. An example is found in chapters 38 and 39 of Ezekiel, which describe a great battle led by Gog of Magog, including a coalition of nations against Israel, with Persia explicitly mentioned. However, the details about who Magog is and the meaning of the symbols in these prophecies are subjects of intense debate among scholars and theologians. Some experts who study biblical prophecies with a future-oriented perspective believe that the mentions of Persia suggest that modern Iran will play a significant role in possible future conflicts with Israel. This view is influenced by the current political scenario, where tensions between Israel and Iran often make headlines, and Iran is seen as one of Israel's main adversaries in the Middle East. This discussion also involves passages from the Book of Daniel, particularly those that describe visions of the four world empires and the future establishment of the kingdom of God. For example, Daniel 8 talks about a clash between a ram with two horns, symbolizing the kings of Media and Persia, and a goat representing the king of Greece. Some contemporary interpretations of these visions relate them to current or future events, suggesting that they may represent principles or forces that remain active today. Leave a comment if you were already familiar with the relationship between the history of the Iranian peoples and the Bible, and subscribe to the channel to not miss upcoming videos.